A book signing at Kepler's Bookstore in Menlo Park, California on May 24, 1990 featured authors Jerilyn Brandelius, David Gans, and Herb Greene. Jerilyn Brandelius had published the Grateful Dead Family Album, both a candid family history of one of America's most enduring rock bands and a priceless time capsule of 60s rock culture and counterculture. Jerilyn was a member of the extended Grateful Dead family and later cared for concert producer Chet Helms and Grateful Dead lyricist John Barlow in their last days. She died from a heart attack in 2020. David Gans had just published Playing in the Band, an oral and visual portrait of the Grateful Dead. He is the host of the weekly syndicated radio show The Grateful Dead Hour and currently hosts a radio show with Gary Lambert on the SiriusXM Grateful Dead channel called Tales from the Golden Road, a call-in show about the Grateful Dead. Herb Greene was part of the 1960s San Francisco art scene and a friend of many of the psychedelic rock musicians of the era. His photographs are a noted record of the era and were used as cover art for several recordings, including Jefferson Airplane's Surrealistic Pillow and the Grateful Dead's In the Dark. He collected his early pictures of the Grateful Dead into a photo book titled Book of the Dead.
It is my pleasure to introduce Jerilyn Brandelius, author of Grateful Dead Family Album.
Oh, my thanks.
David Gans, author of Playing in the Band.
Yay.
And Herb Greene, author of Book of the Dead. I'm sorry, but Paul and Jonas Grushkin weren't able to come this evening. Let me begin by introducing Brian Bothan of Deadhead TV.
Yay. Thank you. I'd just like to thank you all for coming, and especially our special guests here. And a special thank you to Janice and Don from Kepler's for making this whole thing popular. And remind you all to watch Deadhead TV every Thursday night at 9:30 on Cable Co-op Channel 6 right here in Menlo Park. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Brian.
So yeah,
No, hey,
they're letting us take it from here. We did this once before at Black Oak Books, and what we did there was we took questions from the audience. We each talked a little bit about our books, which I don't know, we could spare you that, I guess.
Let's talk about the books.
Let's talk about
Let's
Herbie.
talk about
Let's
my
talk about
contribution.
Herbie, yeah.
Let's talk about my contribution to their books.
Oh, that's a good
There
idea.
you go. Yeah.
93 pictures he has in my book, Herb Greene. He managed to get the guys at the beginning, the middle, and lately. Yeah, that's what I say.
Yeah, that's
really.
it's a miracle. It truly is.
They like Herbie for some reason. I don't know why.
Even the crew like her.
Yeah, even the crew. That's right.
Well, in my experience, when I was putting together Playing in the Band, I ended up collecting a lot of photos out here, although Peter Simon was primarily the primary photo guy back east. I dealt with one legendary, difficult photographer here in the Bay Area and dealt with him and dealt with him and dealt with him to such an extent that ultimately very few of his pictures ended up in the book because it was the only way out of the dilemma. And I subsequently discovered that the only reason that guy was able to exist the way he did was that Herbie was clear off at the other end of the sweetness scale and as easy to deal with and as pleasant and as caring about the subject matter as the other guy was impossible. So I've been in his debt, his moral debt ever since, because it helped me, it helped us get through and helped us put out a really good book too.
Yeah, I have to go along with that, and I think I know who the other guy is.
Gerald's got the best one though. Is I'm the Felix Unger of rock photography.
Right. In fact, the two guys that we're talking about are the Felix Unger and Oscar Madison of rock photography.
Oscar Madison's putting it a little mildly. But
Yeah, right.
Let's change the subject. What do you say?
Anyway, next.
Any questions?
God, these guys don't want to know anything.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody.
Wait, no, I think these are all Deadhead imposters, man. Deadheads always have questions.
Really?
They're just shy.
Well,
Where all the railroad songs come from?
Oh, I
Where
see
do
we
all
have a
the
railroad
railroads
man in our midst here.
well, none of us is in the band or writing songs with the band, so it's kind of tough for us to answer that one. But I sure like those railroad songs.
Yeah, I think it comes from more of their folk music roots when the band, when, you know, in the beginning, a lot of the rock and rollers in the United States were folkies to start with. And Garcia talks about that every now and again. And so I think that that's where it comes from, is from the traditional songs that they do, of which railroad songs, there's
For sure.
quite a
It's
few
all,
good
it's all
ones.
American music, you know.
Yeah.
Like when I met Jerry Garcia, he was playing banjo in a bluegrass band. So that's what
Band busting railroads go together like.
Yeah.
Yeah, steam locomotive.
I was wondering when the Dead review that came out in Rolling Stone Record Guide by Dave Marsh, I was wondering if the Dead had any personal feelings about that when it was written. It's pretty notorious in that.
Geez, I don't even know if they read that kind of stuff. To tell you the truth. It's
I
usually
asked
people
Weir
like
about that
us.
one time, something about did he care about what had been said in a particular review or something, and he and write something, however well intentioned, that just is factually incorrect or critically off base or whatever, and you have to take it all with a grain of salt, and you have to go by the intentions of the people that are doing it. And I think Dave Marsh's intentions vis-a-vis the Grateful Dead are pretty clear. He's not been a fan, and he's not taken the time to understand the Grateful Dead over the years, and his judgment and his very vocal judgment about the Grateful Dead over the years has come from no fresh information whatsoever, since we've been unable to persuade him to go see the band in the last 15 years.
Yeah, I'm a born-again Deadhead myself. I had the same problem. I had preconceived notions, what it was like, because I was there when they were the Warlocks, and I got to go to these little bars around here and listen to Phil Lesh sing, how was that Loving Spoonful song? Do you believe in magic? I mean, that's how far it goes back. And
I've never seen that on anybody's tape list.
No, that's a good one, huh? But so like somewhere along the line, I guess it's when I stopped there's a void of 8 years in this book where I didn't work with the band because they basically didn't hire me, and so I got bitter, and I stopped going to the concerts too. So and I said, God, they can't make records, and and I was like really negative about the whole thing. And
Then we went to the Berkeley Community
the
Theater.
Berkeley Community Theater show got me. He was there. I sat through a whole second set.
His wife and my girlfriend went and got ice cream, and we went in and listened to the second set, and Herbie emerged from it a born-again Deadhead.
Yeah,
Was that the Gimme Some Lovin' night? Was that one?
I don't know, the space thing
It must have
killed
been
me.
87. Whenever they played there,
Second
86
set,
or 87.
it just killed me. And that's a great house. We used to go
86 was the last time they played there, right?
But like I always like it when you stealing and the old stuff. That always kept me going back to the Greek and stuff. But actually getting through a second set was a...
Can you tell us each a little bit about each of your books and how the process was coming together?
Let me start, because it's fresh in my memory, because I just did it on mine. I was shopping a different book, and which is called The Acid Age of San Francisco Rock, which is my entire collection of 60s San Francisco rock photographs with some English bands thrown in. And a publisher in New York saw it and said he knew my work because he had published it in David's book, as it turned out. And he called my agent and said, do you think he has enough material for a Grateful Dead book? And then asked, and the agent called me and I said, I don't. Because I always think of photographs as, a roll of film as one photograph. And so I said, but if you give me a few minutes, maybe I can come up with a compilation, think of something. So I thought, well, it'd be great to have some posters and get another photographer to do live work and, have maybe half of my stuff in it. And we sent the proposal and they came back. He said, we looked at Herbie's contact, we think there's enough material here, go ahead. So I said, sure, no problem. And then I started looking at the images, and I had, to tell you the truth, haven't seen half of the stuff that's in the book until that point, because I'd always just grab one picture off the roll, the rest was junk, and it's a miracle I even saved it, because, and
Thanks for saving it, Herbie.
and then going
thanks,
through,
Herb. Thanks,
through the editing process, actually putting the book together, I decided I'm going to put every damn image I got into this thing, because whether it's very similar or what, because I think that's what everybody wants, and I want to make sure everybody gets everything that I did. And that's basically what this book is. It's proofs. And it's just 25 years with the Grateful Dead, and I don't want, I wanted to call it Brief Encounters with the Dead because 25 years or 20 years, it represents the work, while it happened, probably like an hour and a half with the band. So like photography is nice, it doesn't lie and all that, but I want you to take that into consideration that I didn't live with them, and there were times, in the early days that we spent a lot more time together than we do now, certainly, and now it's like, I see more of them now, I think, than I have ever, just because they go through there so much, different projects.
I think it's, I don't know how many of you are aware of how much great work Herbie's done, but he didn't have the publicist that some other guys did, so his stuff isn't out there as much. But the most notable Herbie Greene photo I know of is the cover of Surrealistic Pillow, which is probably world famous, and everybody knows that one, the Jefferson Airplane's greatest album. That was a Herbie Greene shot, and everybody thought those hieroglyphics there, legend had that as being the wall of the Matrix or something, but it turned out to be a more interesting place than that.
I don't know how that started. I think you started there.
No, I didn't. I've never told a lie in my life. Where actually were those
That
pictures?
was in my dining room. And we got into this flat that was dreadful, landlord Green, and we were sharing, I was going to state at the time, and we were sharing it with this maniac art student. So I painted the apartment, and the dining room had a whole lot of wallpaper on it. So we pulled the wallpaper off and it had that wonderful patina on it with the smudges and the Happy New Year thing. And the guy that lived there was studying Egyptology at State, of course, in that. So he walked in there one day and put hieroglyphics on the wall. And I was going to kill him because he took this wall and ruined it as far as I was concerned. I was going to throw him out the window, threaten to 3 floors. But as it turned out, I managed to photograph the major bands at the time in front of that wall, along with people like Bill Graham and Chet Helms and various street people that I encountered. And now the hieroglyphs just scream out 60s, and it's just not even as cute, and I'm real glad it worked out that way. As it turned out, like Cantner and all those guys wore onks all the time too, so it's worked out really well.
So, no, I
There.
didn't mean to interrupt you. Finish your story of getting the book.
Yeah, about your book, yeah.
Where was it? Oh. So anyway, the deal was I just put everything I had into it, and you guys get it.
Complete Herbie Greene Grateful Dead collection.
I really like it because there's a few of the images that are in my book that he has reproduced really beautifully, and they're dinky in my book. So you get to really. So I think it's a good companion book to
I was
this.
overjoyed with that because
Yeah.
I was really afraid we were going to
Yeah, he
have
liked it they were
a
dinky
big
in my book. He was
crossover of
real happy
images,
about that.
and as it turned out, there's only a few.
Yeah, and
That,
plus
that
I
was
guess
great.
There are a few of my favorites too. So there's no conflict there. It only enhances the experience, right? So what about your book, Dave?
No, you're next.
Oh, come on, Dave.
Mine's been out for 5 years, Jerilyn. You're
Yeah,
next.
right. Well, mine's gone on for 20. I was going to bill him for the whole 20 years of production, but
You did.
yeah, I did. No, I mean, this all started back a few years ago when I was working as a housekeeper, and I forgot that I stuck all these pictures in storage at Beacon's, and this lady at Beacon's was real nice about it, and she never said anything. And then they were going to move their vault out by the airport, and my trunks got discovered, and there was this huge storage bill. And I thought, God, I don't want all those pictures. They were going to burn them because that's what they do if you have archival, if it's film and record storage, they can't sell it like they would other storage. So they were going to destroy them, and I thought, geez, where am I going to get money? What's valuable? And I thought one day, well, the pictures are valuable. So I talked somebody into paying the bill and asked the band if it'd be okay if I could do this book of my pictures, and they said, well, sure, go ahead. And that was in December of '85. And, they figured I couldn't get in too much trouble. And then when I went to one publisher, and I went to this big book convention and walked around with this badge that said Grateful Dead on it, and met Paloma Picasso, who wanted to know if that was a bookstore, and I told her no, it was a rock band. And she said, oh yeah, I know that. And so I got one publisher interested in it, and then they diddled around it to the point where we had the whole thing finished. And then Warner's got interested in it, and the whole situation was a lot better in terms of the money and to do a book of the caliber that this one was turning into. So Warner's picked it up, but they wanted to put Grateful Dead on the cover, which meant that the band had to approve of it, and they had to sign off on it at every stage of production. And it took about 6 months altogether of downtime. Every time it came to a point where they had to sign something, where they had to look at it, then that was more downtime, because they'd have meetings scheduled, and then somebody wouldn't want it, and this and that.
It's not a lot of fun. This is a good place to interrupt and say, this is to get it, we can say this, right?
It's easier to get forgiveness than permission, okay?
Yeah, right.
It is not fun working for the Grateful Dead.
For me, the most important sentence in my book is right up here in the front, where it says, this book is produced under the... And plus, they got their baby pictures, like that was a big one. This gentleman over here is Pig's dad, and his wife. And like Esther was one of the first people, Pigpen's mom was one of the first people to give me pictures, and she gave me his little pony picture here, and this one here, there's his little pony picture, and that started me on the pony picture page. And these ones have of him when he was young. So that, this to me really is important. That and the sentence that says this book is produced under the authority of Grateful Dead Productions and a license therefrom, right here. This is like really, this is the important. Yeah, I know, this is like the really important thing. So for me, that was the toughest part. And then they still complain all the time. I mean, Garcia's still like practically not talking to me about the baby pictures and everything. Don't talk to your brother, jeez. So it's it's been a lot of fun. The kids love it, and I mostly did it for our kids. We've talked about doing a book like this in amongst ourselves. It was once called California Book of the Dead, and I mean even before David, I think that was probably the rumor of that kind of book. I think it might have been something that spurred him to do what he did. Other people too.
I got hired to do.
Oh, you really? They paid you?
No, it started.
They didn't pay you.
Not the band. Hell
I
no.
didn't think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, no.
I was gonna
No,
say.
it was somebody else's book project, and the
Oh,
writer
right.
dropped out. And I got.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
That's not how I heard it.
That's not what happened either. The writer kept insisting that he had to interview Garcia first, and it was during Garcia's I don't want to talk period. And I told him, talk to Bobby. He wants to talk to people, Didn't, and so then he finally just gave up or something.
It worked out well for me. I already had interviews in the can. And
Yeah,
stuff.
right. You were in good. Yeah.
Is it my turn now?
Okay, it's good. Yeah. Well, you asked,
I blundered into my book deal, really. I was working for a music magazine that was attached to Rolling Stone. And so every time I was in New York, I'd go upstairs and talk to the Rolling Stone editors and say, gee, isn't it about time you guys did a story about the Dead? And wouldn't it be nice if somebody who knew about the Dead would write it? And finally, an assignment that had been kicking around for God knows how many years and had 8 or 9 writers putatively going to do it at some point, it finally fell in my lap. And interestingly enough, a couple of members of the band called Jan Wenner and said, well, if Gans is going to do this story about us, I think he should come to Jamaica with us. This was for the Jamaica World Music Festival in November of '82.
Too bad. Yes.
Yeah,
Things never happen.
Right.
I cried all the way to the airport on that, I'll tell you. But the interesting was all the musicians got put in this airline turnaround hotel. It was really this dreadful place called the Intercontinental, and all of the press on this junket got sent to this country club called the Trial Beach and Country Club. It was fabulous. High tea at 4 o'clock every afternoon. The music went on all night. And we were damned if we were going to sleep during the day, given the beautiful weather and everything that was there. So me and my friend G. Brown from the Denver Post were roommates, and we were just hanging out and sleepless and hallucinating and having a grand time the whole weekend. And also there at the hotel was this guy, Bob Miller, who subsequently became Herbie's editor as well, and Peter Simon. And they were there working on this book that Bob had signed for St. Martin's Press. And being a writer trying to make a living, I, of course, elbowed up to this guy and schmoozed him up real good, and we traded phone numbers and stayed in touch. And wouldn't you like an anthology of my music interviews or something, Bob? We stayed in touch over the years, and a year or two later, things got pretty weird with this other author that was supposed to do the book with Peter, and I was asked if I was interested in taking it over. I put my hand over the phone, whooped a couple times, and oh yeah, I guess so, sure. And so there it was. I got the deal, and what I did was I just went through my file cabinet, every interview I had collected myself, and magazine articles and books, and I just marked up all the interesting quotations and stuff. And the only thing I knew for sure was that I wanted to talk about the music, because that was the thing that seemed to get the least coverage out there in the magazines, and especially in the newspaper reviews. Because the music's hard to get a handle on, and the tie-dyes are pretty easy to write about, so the culture got a lot more coverage than the music itself. So I collected 600-700 sheets of paper, each with a sentence or a paragraph or a half a page of excerpted this or that, and then I started sorting them out into piles, and those piles suggested chapters. And so really the creation of Playing in the Band was an improvisation as much as the music is, given a basic structure, And Peter had already collected several thousand photographs, and there was a rather grief-stricken process of reducing all this into a manageable size.
Yeah, I can testify to that process, but
Yeah,
it's terrible.
it's a bitch learning to say no. And can I have a copy of that, please?
I had no problem.
There is one thing about this book I will never, ever, until my dying day, understand, and that is why so many great pictures bit the dust, and this became a double truck.
I like that picture. I like that
Yeah,
picture.
right. I understand.
I like that picture. I like that
I like
picture
it
a
too,
lot.
but I'm damned if I know what it means. I don't know what the information content is, but
Like of all the live shots, you know, like around of the dead, which I had none of mine.
we were thinking the
that
roses
picture-
at the feet was great, but
There's something about the jeans and the boots and everything. That's a really great
This was
photograph.
before hemming had been developed, apparently. So.
No, that's what I like. It's a great look. The frayed jeans. No, that's the kind of thing that sticks in my mind, and that picture sticks in my mind.
That's why it's there,
Mine is
so
the
that
cover
Herbie will
shot.
remember the book.
My complaint about this one's that cover shot. I mean, it's just, you know.
That's a great shot. I saw them shooting
That
that
was
in
originally,
Greek, and boy,
that was
I
originally
had
shot for
four
Life
breaks that
magazine.
day.
That was a
Jesus.
tough one.
This is during one of their extreme weirdo periods.
And the back cover picture is a Herbie Greene shot.
Yeah, well, you're the one that switched to mine. Mine was going to be on the cover. And
That's
now
what I
they're
think. Right.
No, I blame Peter Simon.
That's a good
Let's
idea.
blame Peter.
Yeah, he's not here.
While we're on the topic of some of the photographs and playing in the band, can you tell the story of the Mickey Hart shaved head photo? Or is that still top secret?
It's no secret. Mickey was furious that I put that one in the book, but he wouldn't let me take that picture was taken at the Keystone Berkeley. There was an engineer named Bob Hodis who was working with Mickey, and Bob had shaved his head, and I'm not sure what the transaction was between the two men, but Mickey shortly thereafter shaved his head. And for all I know, everybody in Nevada at the time shaved their head too, but I approached Mickey with my camera. This was not long before I gave up photography, actually. I approached Mickey with the camera and asked him if I could have a picture, and he said absolutely not. And I'm not sure why, but then he went back up on stage to finish his performance, and I took a few pictures on my way out.
Suicidal, Dave.
I figure you don't have to do much to get on Mickey's bad side, so you might as well have some fun while you're at it.
That's exactly
good
right.
thinking, yeah.
It's one of those deals where it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get fucked with anyway, so you might as well do the right thing.
There's a way out. You haven't figured the way out?
Aside from spending a lot of time standing around trying to inflate my reputation, I don't know what else
You
there
just
is.
tell him you're out in front listening to the music.
I always am out in front
Well, you have to
listening
tell
the
him
music.
that. While he's doing that, he stops and he figures, oh my God, he's all listening, you know?
Couldn't be all bad.
Yeah, well, no, it's not that. It doesn't. He all of a sudden thinks he might be making mistakes and stuff, you know. I mean, it really changes. It changes things. It changes things, and you can do the old mystic on him too, and that works real good.
The mystic. I keep
The sun
forgetting
was
that.
going down, Mickey, and I knew I had to be here, and that's enough. That'll do it.
You're underestimating Mickey.
No, I don't.
I went over the manuscript with every member of the band, and I sort of expected to get short shrift from Mickey, and he went over it basically page by page with me, and it
Yeah,
was
he
very
did.
rewarding.
Yeah,
And
me
I,
too.
sure
Yeah,
these guys-
I had the
I
same
added
experience.
probably, I would say 20% of the material in that book was added in 1 week in November of '84 when everybody but Jerry sat down with me and went through the book.
I did my book with no band approval at all.
Yeah, Herbie, yeah.
I got away with murder. I really did. I'm paying for it now though, because I'm doing another project, and I have to double. I'm paying double indemnity.
What book would you do next?
Who, me?
I have a book in the works called Deluxe Mixed Nuts, which is a book I started out to do, and I did this one, and it's a little bit more. It's a lot about the Grateful Dead because I've spent so much time working with them over the last 20-something years. But also, it's other outrageous stories of things that the rock and roll world has done to the real world, and pictures, and just a collection of when I worked for the Family Dog and like that. And then we have a third book that my sisters and I at the office are putting together. We call the Sin City Sisters sequel, Grateful Dead Babylon. We're using that as a threat to keep the band in line. So, that's my trilogy I'm working on now.
That book's going to work better in theory than
I've actually just signed a contract.
What are you gonna
to
do?
This is you guys. This is it. This is a good one. It's Chronicle Books. It's a book a days. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. It's a daytimer kind of affair, and they're like produced just swell, like embossed covers and 90-pound paper, and it's like a 52. Once a week, a picture in a week, and it's Grateful Dead. And it's great.
Right.
That's why I decided I had to go through a lot of band approval on that one. But there's that, and that'll be available in Christmas '91, and it's going to be a very nice product. You're gonna, it's the one I wanted to do in the first place because I'm going to put other artists' work in it.
Great.
Yeah, see, we
Most
both get
likely.
to do the project we started out to do in the first
and
place.
that's nice. And then I've got the full collection of '60s work called The Acid Age of San Francisco Rock is sitting at the publisher now, and if he exercises his option, which I hope he doesn't, it'll go.
Doesn't?
I sure hope he doesn't. And but I have 2 other publishers in line for it, so that should be available. And that's going to be the Mona Lisa. I mean, this is nice, but the other one is great.
Well, Herb, you're saying that like being up front with the camera changes the scene. You seem to say something to that effect.
I said that? Be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
As well, I was wondering if your approach to taking pictures or your attitude towards it changed through like the beginning.
I can actually talk about this because I think about it from time to time.
Yeah, what's
It's the early photographs are all natural light, and the camera's probably on a tripod, particularly indoors. So what you've got is a long shutter speed, like a second. And the pictures I made in 1969 are the best ones. They're like, I consider them world-class photographs. And you have a rapport with the camera, and I use big cameras, medium format and view cameras. And the rapport with the view camera is the guy sits there, and you got to hold still, and you got her under a hood and all that. And
You had to get the Grateful Dead to hold still?
Did it, and they loved it.
You had to get all 6 of them into a frame at one time.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that.
Oh.
See, that's the next thing. And the group shots were tougher. But with the big cameras, you actually got a rapport going, and the bigger the camera, the more rapport between the subject and the lens. And it really shows in the photographs. As I progressed along, technically speaking, and wanting to grow with photography, I got into lighting, and that's short duration flash. And the deal is there, the exposure is laid down in 1/800th of a second or something, or 1,000th, depending, on whatever. But it's like that. So your hand-eye coordination is entirely different, and you're watching things unfold before you, and you're hitting them, and the flash goes off, and the image actually burns into your retina, and you got it. The Dylan Dead photograph was absolutely the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. It had one of 3 nights he was going to be there, and while that was going on, I was photographing, making the images for In the Dark, and I was like just totally hypered out. And I'm not a night person, and this is like on location at Oakland, at Henry J. Kaiser at Mardi Gras time. And Dylan didn't show up till the last day. And these guys, the Dead come. This is like when Jarid. Everything is rolling. Everything is great. It's the best period of Dead. It's wonderful. And the band comes in. They're ecstatic to be doing anything and Dylan, and they're jumping up and down till that day. So I was risky,
Don't stop there, rusty land.
That's right. And so I had to change film, and that was the last chance. And I got the first picture on the first roll was the one. But when I went through the contact sheets, there wasn't anything there. I was like, I'd blown photo opportunity of a lifetime, And I went through the editing process and finally got down to one that I think is terrific because it catches a lot of things happening, like Mickey doing something that related to poor dog day clock.
At one time, I heard they were agonizing over these proof sheets so much that they were cutting them up.
Dylan was impossibly critical about them. We got the picture. Every Bill ran hard to do it because of the touchy thing with the Dead, and Dylan wouldn't approve it. And he finally sent back contact prints, and we were going to cut out his head and airbrush, do a side text thing to
Splice him in?
Yeah, splice him in.
And ended up we just had to retouch under his eyes, to make it, and that. But it was a very painful process. And the agonizing thing, but like the image laid down just like that. And all the stuff I did for In the Dark has that cartoon quality. In the Dark, after looking at it, for a few years, I really like it. I just think it's I kind of took a certain amount of heat regarding the project because of the eyes and stuff. The concept was given me by the Grateful Dead, and I had to make something out of it. And I think what I came up with is, so particularly we opened it up and got the nice portraits into black and white group shot, which is another one of those cartoon flash in a second. Images I don't know if people are familiar with that image, but that's a wonderful, wonderful photograph because they're all just like nailed. The funny thing about In the Dark was the eye pictures, people in the office didn't know who the eyes belonged to. It was a puzzle. It was great.
Herbie, can you tell us how the process involved in that eye shot?
It was a mess, wasn't it?
Oh, the mask. Well, this is a magic story, actually. They wanted the eyes coming out of the dark. And so I did one night, they did the tryout, and it was horrible. It didn't work. I didn't light it properly. So the second night I came in and ghost lit it with a very narrow light box, and it came out great. And So those individual frames, 2 1/4, 3 1/4 transparencies were like individually separated and then via computer masked together. So there's one print of that image that I own. It's considered the original art. I'll never sell it, but God, somebody make me an offer, you know. And it's an amazing print. I love it. So that's the deal there. The eyes. So the eyes are wandering around, right? In the dark, we came up with this great concept, you know, film recorded in the dark, you know, it'd be great. And, so I'm making eye photographs. And I look around, and this woman walks into the room. The eyeballs over this, it's a mask, and it's like collage with eyeballs. And it's like, oh my God, they're photographing eyes. And as it turned out, that woman had never been to a Grateful Dead concert, ever. Once I heard that story, it was like,
Yeah,
I said,
she's a very famous harpsichordist.
that's gonna be the back cover, is because it was too magic to avoid. The eyes inside the mask are Mickey's, if you can find them. Because those are Mickey's eyes. And that caused a lot of problems. Some people, it's a loathsome image and it's compelling. I think it's great. I don't really consider myself an artist, even though now it's been kind of foisted on me. And I don't mind it at all. But that kind of magic doesn't happen very often. And that's what it is. And I said, David said, when I was talking that night, I was born again. I said, what's the deal with the dead? What is this? And he said, it's magic. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, it changes your life. And
I said that?
You said that. He said, that's the magic.
Ruined my life.
Yeah, well, I didn't say for what direction it was going to do, and it does change your life.
I'll never get a straight job again.
It certainly changed my life again. I'm amazed.
It spoils you for working out there in the mundane world.
But people either love looking at that image or not, and there was a lot of problems with the record company actually sent a proof without it on there. And that infuriated the band enough to say that they said, well, then it's definitely going with that image on there. And that's the way those guys are. And it's amazing.
Defiance, really.
Yeah, right.
Whatever it is, it's defiance.
They're frightening.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the band's early history in this area?
I can only a little.
You guys?
Well,
Mr. McKernan might be able to.
Were you there?
No.
No, you didn't.
What area?
I didn't move to the Bay Area
Here.
until the 60s.
Oh, Palo Alto? I wasn't here, actually. Annette! There's somebody here in the
We
room.
came, my ex-wife and I, Mariska
She was
Nelson,
here.
Mariska, my first wife, who's now married to David Nelson and she also works for the Dead now, came down here a couple of times to stay with them in Palo Alto, and we used to come down to Belmont to hear the Warlocks play, which was really fun. It was really fun. And they were great, you know, they were all they're living in just a couple of houses or whatever, and they go running to the record store and put the earphones on and listen to the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. They're always making big trips to the record store, getting stacks and stacks and stacks of records, because they were covering tunes at the time. They didn't have any other
Everybody was
material.
music freaks too, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
What other tunes besides If You Believe in Magic?
well, there was
They did,
In the
Hey
Early
You-
Morning Rain and
Yeah.
Hey Little One by Dorsey Burnett's on
Little
one
Red
of those
Rooster.
tapes.
Can we, you know,
One that's not on tape.
they
But
covered
High Heel Sneakers I heard on a tape.
Hey, you
once.
get to the.
Get off my cloud?
Well, they said, hey, you get the. Can I say this on cable TV?
They can edit it out later, Herb.
They sang. They did a hey, you get the fuck off my cow.
Cow?
Cow.
Cow?
Cow. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? No, but if it was a.
What does that tell us about Lesh's hearing?
What is it? Eyes of the worm? I don't know. Well, that's my own experience with the band down here.
What about Stanford shows? They were playing here in the 60s, weren't they?
I have no idea.
Yeah, so
I sure
Steve
missed those
Marcus said
outdoor
he
shows.
first saw them in El Camino Park in '66 or something.
Yeah, I think there's a
They're
picture.
just down the
in my
road
book.
here.
I'm talking 64.
We don't know these things.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering, could you tell us about you said about working with Family Dog? Could you just tell us how you got started in your relationship?
Well, I worked for the Family Dog out on the Great Highway. I never worked for them in the Avalon, but when the band played the Avalon and places like that, I saw them here in San Francisco, where I met them. My dad even saved this, it's in the book. I met them on August the 2nd. Here's a picture. Here they are in El Camino Park. All right? Like that outfit Garcia has on, he's always the snappy dresser.
Fashion
Such a
statement.
snappy dresser, yeah. No, I met them August 2nd, 1968. Here's the picture right here. There I am. They came down, there I am right there. They came down and played our ballroom in San Diego. And that's how I met them. So they spent a couple days hanging out.
That's
with us.
great. You know, one of the designers on my book went to school down here in the Peninsula, and the Dead played their prom. Amazing. Gail Grant.
Yeah, so anyway, that's how I met them. And I hung out with a lot of the roadies and worked for the band watching their houses. In the 70s when they toured a lot, like 1970 they played something like, I don't know, almost 200 shows or something outrageous. They toured a lot in the early 70s. And I used to watch their houses and watch the kids and like that. So I never was so much a fan in that sense that I trooped around after them like the fans do, but we became friends. And then in 1972 I had a project that involved Tower of Power, and I had to go find a ranch for them to have this party at, and I remembered that this guy Mickey Hart had a ranch in Novato. Warner Brothers Records, who I was working with at the time, had just signed Garcia and Weir and Mickey to solo contracts in an effort to keep the Dead signed, because they'd been with this company for a long time. They thought, well, we'll sign these 3 guys up and then the rest of them will just come along, but it didn't happen. They just said thanks for all the money, and they gave him an outrageous amount of money too. I mean, it was really a lot. And so I went out to see Mickey, and after 3 or 4 times of going out there to talk to him, he finally let me use his place, and we became friends. And then we ended up being together for about 10 years after that. So and during the early years of that time, he was not with the Grateful Dead. Again, so I didn't become so much a fan of theirs, but that I was living with Mickey and individual members, like we made Hunter's solo records out at our ranch, and we did Diga and Pistol Back and Mama and all this. So individual members at Sea Stones we did out there would come out and we would work with them. And then in 75, when Mickey went back with the Grateful Dead, of course, at that time I started to go out on the road and hang with them more like that. But so for me, it's been more of a personal relationship, and that's kind of the focus in the pictures that I collected for my book. I tried to keep it in house and get from people in the Grateful Dead family and just kind of show our other side of life, which really is not so much different from the stage version. They eat, sleep, and breathe music. That's all they do. Pretty much. Yeah.
I'd like to know what, if anything, any of you may know about the future release of some of the band's early live material.
That's all in the works now. So it's finally they're starting to make public utterances about it.
This is good. This is good.
It is good.
We'll get some pig pen.
I've been putting this stuff out on the radio the last 5 years saying, make it for sale already, I mean, I get a lot of mail from people going, can I buy a tape of that? Or I'd like to hear that whole show. Or can I send you some blanks, And really there's opposition to putting the stuff out on the radio because there's a faction in the Grateful Dead. There are factions in the Grateful Dead that believe that it's giving away their retirement fund and stuff. And my answer to that has always been, well, for Christ's sakes, get with it already, I would like to be able to say at the end of every hour, and if you'd like 90 minutes of this show, send your $15 to Kid Candelario. And finally, not that they're listening to me, God forbid, but finally they're getting around to doing that kind of stuff because they have a tremendous amount of great music in the vault, and a lot of the best of it has never seen the light of day.
I know that a lot of the older shows on the Betty boards are now available from the vaults, but how many shows are left in the vaults that aren't available right now?
Thousands.
Yeah.
I'm pulling them out a little bit at a time. I don't know. I have no idea what their specific plans are. I know that there's a certain amount of stuff in multi-track form. The tour that was recorded for the Skull and Roses album includes the entire final run at the Fillmore East in April '71, and some stuff. There's a Capitol Theater in February '71, all of which exists in multi-track, and all of which is some of the all-time great Grateful Dead performances. And I just have to assume that somebody will get around to remixing a lot of that stuff and making some of it available. And if they don't, they're crazy. 74 was recorded, the October 74 Winterland run was recorded, and all the wrong stuff was put out on an album for that. So there's a lot more of that, some stuff that made it into the movie that didn't make it onto an album. There is a wealth of material, and there are some great 2-tracks too. My instincts tell me that Bear used to mix for the tape instead of the house.
Yes, I think
there's a
that's
lot of really great
safely
stereo
say that.
recordings. The Bear's Choice album was direct to stereo. That was Owsley mixing for the tape, and I think he did a sublime job of it. Probably at the expense of the paying customers, but you know, and I don't know where his stash is, but I know that there's a bunch of stuff that could go direct to CD, and I would hope that they would also put out another level of stuff. I know that the audio freaks and the real high-end technoids in the band and stuff would not countenance putting out a lot of things direct from an old analog 2-track onto CD, but I have found some things in there. Just spectacular performances and intimate little theaters and great stuff, and now the technology exists to clean that stuff up. Mickey is doing that with the Smithsonian Folkways collection, and with a fellow named Joe Gastwort, who's a brilliant mastering engineer, and some equipment, Macintosh-based signal processing gear that can take the noise out of these old tapes and stuff. So I think over the next few years, as touring and gets tougher and tougher and people get tireder and their income, when they begin to realize that they can earn some money from this stuff, that we'll see it coming out.
A few months ago, there was a lot of noise about these 36 reels that someone in Calaveras found. What about that?
I don't know. They stopped returning my calls.
Master tapes.
I don't know anything about that stuff, really. Huh? That's what it said in the paper, but I suspect disinformation on that story. I don't know.
I tried calling too.
Yeah, well, I got a call from the guy at the radio station, but then they spoke to a Grateful Dead lawyer or something, and that was the last I heard from him.
You can't do that.
Way in the back there. Historic Dead? Is that Sunflower record? There were 3 albums put out by sort of quasi-legal albums that were somebody had recorded them at the Avalon Ballroom and may or may not have had the rights to put them out, but you can find them. One of them was on Sunflower, one of them was on MGM something or other, and one of them is actually just sort of a portmanteau, a version of the other 2, I think. And Vintage Dead and I don't know.
There's the Historic Dead, and then there's another one.
There's another one. They're very hard to find, and they're not legit, but there's a great version of It's All Over Now, Baby Blue on one of them, and stuff. There's a lot of...
You can usually find the Rasputin and these records.
So I have one of them, and I haven't been able to find the other 2.
It's very cool. It's got flying birds, skeleton. You ever seen that? Maybe that's there.
I don't know. There's a Village Music. No, actually, you don't have a lot of Dead boots at Village. I don't know. I don't know where all those records are, but wish I did.
Yeah.
Yo.
Your book is 5 years old. Do you feel obligated to put out a newer one?
Actually, the funny thing is, I've been thinking about maybe redoing that book in a different medium, because after that book and the next one that I did, which was about Talking Heads, then I got a computer. After I decided I didn't want to write any more books because it was torture, I got a computer, and I began to realize that what I had done was what's now known as hypermedia. That book, with the references that I have on the original sheets, is a set of pointers into a rather large sphere of information that I collected. I mean, I'd just been saving magazine articles and books and done my own interviews and transcripts and stuff. So really what that is a map of the information I had collected. And I was thinking about, now that CD-ROM and Laserdisc and all that stuff are available, that I might be able to get somebody to finance production of that thing as a multimedia presentation where you could have the musical examples in there, lots more pictures, and instead of that, which is essentially my path through that information, to be able to access all that information in other ways, like take the Bob Weir path through all of it, or take the Train Songs path through it, or take, the guitar player's path, or the girlfriend's path. I mean, there's a million ways to read through this huge amount of information, and I don't know, but that would be one possibility. Another would be, I don't really have the scholarship chops to do it, but if I could find the right collaborator, I think I'd like to do a real authoritative musical history of the band, tracing all of their roots back to where they came from.
Supposedly available on the internet for copy.
I don't know. Hasn't crossed my desk yet.
Can you talk about the net? Do you read all
The
the
net?
mail?
No, I don't read all that stuff. Well, I belong to a computer network. The system that I belong to is called The Well, and we have 6 different groups of Grateful Dead topics and tapes and concerts. People plan their trips together and exchange tickets and stuff. We started a new one recently called Dead Lit, where we really all the pointy-headed intellectuals talk about train songs and alliteration and what terrapin really means and stuff like that. And it's really great. I mean, we got hooked up to a national network of machines that's probably got 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 computers all talking through this amazing package of software, so that mail and messages are propagated to all these machines, and I participate on that. I post the Grateful Dead Hour listings and stuff, get requests for tapes from people I've never seen in Canada and stuff like that. It's fascinating. If you have a computer and a modem, you can join up on this thing, and it's really an amazing thing. I know I've formed a lot of friendships and collaborations and shared a lot of information and had an immense amount of fun doing that. And lots of few complaints too.
Move on.
Well, that was good. Yeah, you find out that there's a lot of deadheads work in computers, and a lot of deadheads at colleges have access to computers, and a lot of deadheads have a lot to say to each other.
Can you tell us about this new book, Songs of Our Own?
Oh, yeah, that was, that's a guy that I met through The Well, who's been trying to collect all that stuff. He's just a deadhead who worked on the sound crew at Fillmore East back then, and he lives out in Salinas now. I didn't bring any of his flyers with me, but if you give me your name, I'll get it to him and he can send you his information. It's really, I think he's just looking to put together a collective document from all of us old geezers, to whom this means a little too much to just let it go undone. Ask somebody else.
I got it.
The dead bodies of at least 12 people.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That
It
thing
costs $10,000 a month.
It
Just
sounded
the
so
speakers.
good.
And also, it's one of Rhodey's wives, they've been married for 20 years almost. She told me that was the hardest period of her life with him, to watch him climb that scaffolding, 5 hours of setup and 10 hours of teardown every day.
And in the middle of every show, there'd be somebody up there swapping out a speaker. I mean, they carried as many spares as they had speakers on
$10,000
stage.
a month for the speakers. One of
And,
the guys had to go to reconing school. Even.
That's right. It's true, and it was killing them. And also, that happened during the height of the gas crisis in '74, when we were all lining up to fill our tanks. These guys were trying to keep 8
They had
trucks on
2
the road.
stages leapfrogging across the country.
It was insane, but God, it sounded good.
Yeah, it did.
That was the only year I went out on the road a lot with the Dead. I saw a lot of shows. God, it sounded good. Well, no, it sounds pretty damn good now, but there was an amazing cleanness to it. Because no two with a live album, so I think there's a real good chance that the Director Marcel stuff's going to be on it.
What are the live albums that I've heard about? A Jerry Band live album. I've heard about tapes from this tour. Does anybody have any ideas what might be coming out?
Later.
Yeah.
Are we going to be seeing more Grateful Dead Hour coming up in the Bay Area?
It's on KPFA, Wednesdays at 8.
It just started again.
In fact, just on the way down here, sitting in traffic, I was thinking, God, I forgot to mention the book signing last night. It was marathon night. But yeah, we've been on since May 9th, and it's a delight to be on KPFA, where they not only allow weird stuff, they demand it.
Yes. What can we expect an upcoming Grateful Dead Hour?
Well, there's a show, the one I was working on today, it's tapes from December 29, '77, which I know at least 10 people whose lives were changed by that gig. It was the first time they played China Cat Sunflower since the retirement, and I was there in the balcony. It was a knockout. there's tons of good stuff there. I just found a version of the Dead doing the green grass at home. Unspeakably bad, but I played it because you have to hear it once. You know? Not a tune. It was raggedy, but it was like it was a very intimate moment that they would do something that bad on stage. It's hard to say, Scott. Every time I get into the vault, I grab what I can, and I come home and I listen to it and see what's in there. Actually, this guy's file is still in my computer. One of these days, I'm going to string together those train songs and do something.
Is that Lake Tyler showing the vault?
Which Lake
One
Tyler?
with Big Boy Pete from '68.
Kings Beach Ball.
I don't know. Part of that stuff was on Anthem. I don't know.
Very little.
I would have to go there every day for months to figure it all out.
I'll start a rumor.
Hey, everybody, Herbie's going to start a rumor.
I heard this in an important place, and it was talking about a Minkin record.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've been listening. It seems like I've been around a few times. I didn't know when I was working with Steve Wright, talking to the little girl, and nobody else would take her, and Rush didn't understand why I would go to that. Amazing. But she could take him. Anyway, so I mean, I've been on the Dead off and on for all these years, and my family's directly involved with it. My ex-wife worked for Bill Graham for years and years and years as personal secretary, and we were like here at the formation of the music thing, worked diligently at both of us, and she's given her life to music, and it did. I never could understand why she go to Los Angeles. He with the baby and go down there with the girls. We call she and her girlfriend went to all the shows. We call them Boogie and Woogie, you know. It was amazing. So I've been trying to figure out what it all means. I've been starting to make these weird connections of why I didn't get in the military and how all this happened so I could be in San Francisco to take those pictures. And it's like there was a horrible moment a few years ago when a file of negatives disappeared out of my workplace and magically reappeared. And it was the stuff that's actually in San Francisco Rock. It was all the great ones of Janice, and it was like it came back. And so there's been all this stuff going. I've been like custodian of this material for a long time, and I've actually lost a couple of negatives. One of Garcia, which is over there, supposed to be the black and white, which is great. When it wasn't very slick, and it makes me sick. When I thought I lost the whole file, I was like, it was devastating, and I felt like I betrayed everybody, you know, not so much myself, but it was just like, I think of the images and I say, oh my God, nobody's going to see that now. So recently I've been thinking, why is it? You know, why did I get to go back in the dark period and make those photographs? Because that's what made the book.
Very bad.
Oh, I was a bad guy. But there's reasons for all these things, I suppose, and now I finally figured out, and that's why I dedicated to Big Pen.
Put out at least one Best of Big Pen.
I didn't go off all the old stuff that's on the record, you know. Now, it doesn't matter. There was talk a number of years ago putting a record out, and they were going through tapes, you know, and like, there's all this stuff already recorded.
Mickey and I and Esther, we went through all these tapes where a bunch of them that she brought one day, it was just him going, Katie me, for hours and hours. It was so funny. And it was hard for us at that time. It was too soon after he checked out, you know, for us to sit and listen to it and really be objective, you know. And so then we decided that none of us could be objective. We were all too brokenhearted still. And so
but, you know, like all that stuff could be put on one disc and...
Yeah.
Or several.
Whatever, really, you know, it'd be terrific.
There has not been a
And there's some great backup singing on that stuff.
Yeah.
Backup singing when they sound like those 40s bands, you know, the guy in the trombone section stands up and does a little chant behind this. And the Dead do that.
Real gospel-y, too, on some of them.
Well, there was a great concert that they did at this place called Pepperland in San Rafael one time, and Janice showed up, and Janice and Pigpen did this screaming version of High-Heeled Sneakers, and then Janice decided she was in love with Garcia for that moment, and she went over and threw her arms around him and started kissing him, and Pigpen said, going, yeah, like, oh, Mama, and she laid the slip lock on Jerry, and he just kept playing his guitar. It was Janis Joplin hanging off his face, you know. It was really great. It was really, I'll never forget it. I was going, wow, look at that. Oh boy, yeah, I think there is in the Dead base in the new one. That's listed anyway. But yeah, that was pretty funny. That was good. That was one of the better nights.
Yeah, it's just as this to put in here. I have a show of photographs up in the city of Book of the Dead. It's at Robert Koch Gallery at 210 Post Street, which is at Post and Grant on the second floor, and it's We opened last night, and it was great. We had a really good time, and the photographs are beautiful. We've evolved. I have a very good printer now, and we've evolved over the last 4 years. The stuff's been going through galleries across the country. And we got the prints down, so they're knockout cold. You really can't tell from the book, unfortunately. But if the book cost $100 a unit, nobody could buy it.
How long is it going to be there here?
About a month. So they're open on Saturdays, too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite pictures in here of yours, Herbie, is one of Jerry in front of the American flag playing the banjo.
Yeah.
And I was wondering when and where it was taken, and if you have any
That was
great
at,
insight stories
that's at
about
710 Ashbury. And there's another image that'll be in the other book where he's standing up looking out the window that's better. But it's hard, you know, it's hard. It's hard. No, I met Jerry Garcia through the banjo. When I came to San Francisco, I was trying to learn how to play banjo, and I hung out on the folk scene, and I heard Garcia playing through, you know, the open door at this coffee shop in North Beach, and this is in the beatnik era, was still going on. And I just went in there, and after they were through, I introduced myself, and I'm not quite sure how we all picked up in the middle 60s whenever all this stuff started, but it was all through folk music. And so I actually had that particular Wayman banjo in my house for like a year and a half or something, storage. He'd loaned it to me. He showed me how to drop them. But like that, and that's Garcia. I feel like I always loved his voice. I mean, to me, it's a perfect banjo voice. He's got a lot of nice, great new instruments, and that's great. But when I see Jerry, when I'm photographing, there'll be like a 5-year gap in some of these places, and we always seem to sit down and get the camera out and do it, and the conversation starts right where we left off at the last session, which was just talking about the instruments. So that kind of is intriguing. You get me to talk about the banjo. So I love him.
Has he said anything about maybe he'd pick up the banjo again for a show?
I doubt if he ever would.
Yeah, it'd be like getting him to pick up the pedal steel again.
The best time I've ever had with the Grateful Dead was right after Jerry got well, and I was working doing the portraits, and I got to go to all the Dylan Dead rehearsals. I just left work and went, and then they didn't see me for a week. That was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. He
played banjo.
He played banjo. He played pedal steel. He played I think he played mandolin. Dylan played mandolin a lot, and that was absolutely remarkable. Because this one song, you forget how many songs. That's unbelievable.
It was so good that they didn't do any of it on tour.
Right. That was the most disappointing thing in my life. When I waited for that.
Seasoned Dylan watchers were not surprised.
I waited for that the release of that record with the highest hopes. I was just this is gonna be great, and I was just to this day I feel the best thing on that thing is my photograph. Outside of Heaven's Door, I'll give it that. But that was a big disappointment to me.
Can you tell us about that photo session?
I did.
He did already.
It was a very unpleasant
You were
10
busy,
minutes.
Scott.
Yeah.
And that was the first shot that you shot?
The first shot on the second roll.
On the second.
But, think what you want. It was the very first shot.
Right, watch the
But really,
tapes.
there wasn't anything else on the session. It was a miracle.
Was there any candid photography during the session?
That's candid photography. No, like
Try getting them to pose.
That kind of, that's what I was talking about, is that kind of, when I first started photographing them, I actually posed them. You'd sit down, take that cigarette out of your hand, Garcia, and you guys do this and that. Actually, this is a great thing, it's pointing stuff. And there's another hand here. This is trivia, this is a good one, for the well. Whose hand is this?
Well, whose hand is it, Herb?
Are you ready? Hank Harrison!
Oh, no.
Who's Hank Harrison?
Who's Hank Harrison?
He was their manager at the time,
Guys. But no, like that, the photographing the dead now is like, it's going on, like, it's risking, because you'll let them run wild, you're jumping up and down, and that's why getting anything that's cohesive at all is fantastic. And when they actually work, when you get interplay with the people, it's truly magic. That's why I like that in the dark, the white background shot so much, because it really nails them.
Yeah, back there.
at Mount Tellulah Highest. Were you at Mount Tellulah Highest or the Russian River? You were speaking of Soja around. I was wondering if either of those.
Yeah.
Speaking of hands, I just want, does anybody know how Jarid really lost his finger?
His brother
chopped it off. That's true. It's the truth.
Why?
They were out, I think, on...
They're playing a game.
No, they were out camping.
Boys.
They were out camping.
He was chopping wood, and Jerry
Something
stuck
like
his
that,
hand in the
yeah.
wrong
Jerry
place.
stuck his hand in the wrong place, yeah.
Does Jerry have one black shirt or a whole closet?
I knew somebody was going to ask that. Jerilyn?
Huh? No, he learned that from one of the roadies. It's the dresses, the dresses you go, he just throws them away, gets new black ones as he goes,
They don't show stains.
Yeah. That's right. I remember
now the
one
guy in the
lady-
back.
Any idea how Clemens came into the picture now, plans for the shows participated at the stage?
I didn't do it.
Yeah, right. He just turned up.
Kind of nice, though.
Yeah. Well, just they have a number of friends that have sat in with them, like from time to time. John Cipollina sat in with them a number of times. Lee Oscar, different people, on the road. They have people come sit in, just to
Spencer
he's just
Davis,
another
few
guest star,
times.
yeah.
The Nevs.
Yeah, the Nevs, yeah.
That's the best.
Just a guest star, yeah.
Harvey, do you do color photography?
Yeah, I do. I don't have a lot of color material on the Dead, but what I've got's going to be in this Chronicle project.
Some of these started out as color.
There's some color conversions from in the dark in here.
There's that whole beautiful series that you did. Remember the ones that we had, the 5 prints?
Yeah, those are going to be in color in the Chronicle.
Yeah, they're
book.
beautiful. Those are gorgeous.
So there's going to be some nice color.
Yo.
Trivia question, David. Whatever happened to the background of your cover photo? The sky that's...
That was done by Michael O'Neill's girlfriend, I think, and she probably owns it. That cover shot of Playing in the Band was originally, the shoot was for Life magazine, which did a 20 years later something or other in '85, and that was shot by Michael O'Neill, and I believe the credit's on the back for his girlfriend, and I suspect that they own it. The motorcycle, I believe, is Harry Poppick's.
Yeah.
One of the sound guys, I think. That was backstage at the Greek. Yeah.
Did Mike ever use it?
Yeah, it was in there. They had an issue about, yes?
Yes, we did. It's true.
Magic.
Me and Annette and Sue, it was on this tape that we had.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's get together after. Coming soon to a radio station near you. We hope.
Huh?
Phil
the
Lesh.
original one. Oh.
Who sang lead, Annette?
Yeah, there's John Sebastian. Yeah, she's
Oh,
talking
I
about
thought you had
she's talking about
Phil.
the Love and Spoon.
I thought you had Phil doing it.
I thought you meant you had Tim of the Dead do it. Forget it then.
Yeah, now that she stood up and said something, let's make her tell us all about the early days with the Dead down here in Menlo Park.
What's Bob Dylan really like?
Yeah. It's Bob Dylan's birthday.
Today?
That's right, yeah.
Hey,
He's
happy-
49. This is his last year of the 40s.
Thanks for the great vibes, Bob. Next?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So are we going to sign books here? Or what are we doing?
Is that what we
Do we
do?
have a
Let's do it.
schedule?
Yeah, let's just do that.
We have
Okay.
to wrap this up
Let's
now.
do this.
Okay, yeah, what time is it?
Now, wait, Brian, do you want to tell people to go across the street after we're done here?
Why don't you do it, Dave?
Well, what time does that start?
9:30.
At 9:30, across the street at Su Hong Restaurant, Deadhead TV is going to be playing on the sets there, and we're all going to go over there and chow down and watch DTV.
Right.
And you all should join us.
Deadhead TV Thursday night at 9:30.
Deadhead TV Thursday night at
Across the
9:30
street.
on channel cable channel 6 here in beautiful Palo Alto.
Thanks for coming. They'll be available for signing their books up front and their books in the back. Thanks again.
Thank you.